The morning sun of the Andromeda sector's outer rim glinted off the Academy's tall metallic spires, casting long shadows across the training grounds. Students from countless species hurried through the corridors, some chatting, some practicing, and some already buried in holotexts. Leora, a young alien girl with violet-tinted skin and eyes like polished amethyst, moved quietly through the hall, clutching her sketchpad. Her sketchpad had become her secret sanctuary. On its pages, she drew the things she admired: mechanical designs, alien landscapes, and lately humans. She had seen humans before, in holofeeds and historical records. Something about their resilience, their cleverness, and the way they handled challenges fascinated her. She had tried to keep this admiration private. Knowing her peers would not understand, she found her usual corner in the classroom, where a holoscreen flickered softly with schematics of interstellar technology. Leora spread her sketchpad on the desk and began tracing the face of a human man she had seen in a holofeed the night before. His sharp jaw, calm expression, and confident posture seemed almost alive on the page. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. A group of alien students, tall, muscular, and covered in blue scales, noticed her sketching. One of them, a particularly arrogant student named Varen, leaned over to a smaller golden-feathered alien nearby. "Look at her," Varen sneered, his voice carrying just enough for Leora to hear. "She's sketching humans again. Pathetic." Leora's stomach tightened. She had expected this, but it still hurt. The whispers grew louder, joined by small chuckles and snickers. "Why waste time on weak creatures?" one of the smaller aliens hissed. "Humans are primitive. They can't even match our physical abilities." Leora didn't respond. Her pencil continued to move across the page, shading the contours of the human's face. She refused to let their mockery distract her. This admiration was hers, and no one could take it away. Varen leaned closer, his blue-scaled hand resting on the edge of her desk. "You know, you really should focus on something that matters," he said with a cruel smile. "Humans aren't impressive. You're wasting your time." She kept her gaze on the sketch. "They may not be like you," she said softly, "but that doesn't make them weak." The other students laughed, louder this time, some imitating human gestures in a mocking fashion. Leora's ears burned with embarrassment, but she held her ground. She had learned early on that arguing often made the mockery worse. Then, without warning, the classroom door hissed open. The seal slid aside and a hush fell over the room. A human stepped in. He moved with a calm confidence that seemed to silence the room. His dark hair was slightly tousled and his eyes scanned the classroom quickly, as if taking everything in at once. He wore a simple uniform, unadorned but practical, which somehow made him stand out even more among the aliens. Leora's heart skipped a beat. She had seen him before in holofeeds, and now he was real, right here, walking into the place where she had been laughed at for admiring humans. The human's gaze met hers briefly, and he offered a small, polite nod. It wasn't a broad smile or a showy gesture, just a simple acknowledgement as if to say, "I see you." The classroom remained silent. Even Varen, who had never been easily surprised, froze. His smirk faltered as he processed the presence of a human who didn't seem intimidated. "Class," the teacher said. A tall, crystalline-skinned alien with multiple eyes. "We have a human exchange student joining us. His name is Ethan. Treat him with respect." The other students murmured, some curious, some skeptical. Humans were not common in this academy, and most aliens had preconceived notions about them: weak, fragile, and incapable of handling rigorous training. Leora felt a spark of hope. For the first time, someone she admired was here. Not in a holofeed, not in a sketch, but real. And not just real, but standing confidently beside her. Ethan walked past the mocking group of students and chose a seat near Leora. She glanced at him nervously, unsure if she should speak. "Hello," he said softly, his voice calm and steady. Leora blinked in surprise. His presence felt comforting, almost reassuring, and the sound of his voice cut through the tension in the room. "Hi," she replied quietly. The alien students who had been mocking her shifted uncomfortably. They were not used to humans who did not cower, plead, or show fear. Ethan simply existed calmly and confidently, and it unsettled them. The lesson began. The holoscreen projected a complex problem: stabilizing energy flows within a simulated reactor. Many of the alien students immediately activated their powers. manipulating energy with multiple limbs, trying to solve the problem with speed and force. Ethan, however, leaned slightly toward Leora and whispered, "Do you understand this part?" Leora blinked. No one had ever asked her for help before. I think so," she replied, pointing at her notes. Ethan nodded. "Good. Let's solve it together." They began working side by side. While the aliens relied on power, Ethan and Leora used observation, patience, and careful calculation. Slowly, the reactor stabilized under their guidance. The other students looked on in surprise. A human and an alien had solved the problem without using flashy powers or brute force. It was a quiet demonstration, but one that could not be ignored. Veyron's eyes narrowed. He had expected this human to fail spectacularly, to be weak and ineffectual. Instead, Ethan had solved a problem that had troubled many of the aliens in the class. Leora felt a surge of pride. She had admired humans for their ingenuity and resilience, but seeing it in action, witnessing it firsthand, was different. She realized her admiration was not foolish. It was recognition of something truly remarkable. As the lesson ended, the students filed out of the classroom. Ethan glanced at Leora and said quietly, "Don't let them discourage you. Admiration is never weakness." For Leora, those words were like a shield. She had feared judgment and ridicule, but now she understood that her fascination, her admiration, was a strength. It connected her to something bigger, something extraordinary. Veyron and his group lingered behind, exchanging uneasy glances. The human had walked in, remained calm, and shown skill and intelligence that they had not expected. They could not ignore him, nor could they easily dismiss Leora anymore. The rest of the day passed in a blur for Leora. She returned to her quarters and opened her sketchpad again, not to draw in secret, but to continue capturing what inspired her. This time she drew Ethan, carefully sketching the calm determination on his face. She realized that humans were not just interesting. They were a force to be acknowledged, a presence that could inspire change. That evening, she reflected on the day. The mockery had started as sharp and painful, but it had ended with a quiet lesson. Strength was not always physical. Power was not always visible. And admiration was not weakness, it was foresight, understanding, and respect. Ethan had walked in and changed everything. And for Leora, the world felt a little bigger, a little brighter, and infinitely more exciting. For the first time, she dared to hope that humans and the qualities she admired so much could belong in this academy, and in her heart, she knew that this was only the beginning. The classroom hummed with quiet chatter and the soft whir of hovering holoscreens. Leora sat at her usual desk near the corner, her sketchpad open in front of her. The lines and curves on the page formed the face of a human man she had seen in a holofeed the night before. There was something about him that fascinated her. His calm confidence, the way he seemed to solve problems that the aliens around her would struggle with. She had never admitted this fascination to anyone, not because it was wrong, but because she knew the others would mock her, and mock her they did. A group of alien students huddled a few desks away, whispering and giggling as they glanced at Leora. One of them, a tall, blue-skinned creature with elongated arms, leaned over to a smaller alien with golden feathers covering their body. "Look at her," the tall one sneered, his voice carrying just enough for Leora to hear. "She's daydreaming about humans again. Pathetic." Leora's stomach tightened, but she didn't look up. She had learned to ignore them. Her pencil continued moving across the page, shading the outline of the human's jaw, the curve of his shoulders. She imagined how strong he might be, how clever, how different from the aliens who surrounded her every day. The whispers grew louder, and more students joined in. "Why would anyone waste time thinking about humans?" one of them hissed, clearly trying to make her feel small. "They are weak, primitive, not worth even imagining." Leora's hands trembled slightly, but she refused to respond. She knew that defending herself would only give them more satisfaction. Instead, she focused on the man in her sketch. Her admiration for humans was quiet, personal, and no one could take that away from her. Then, the classroom door slid open. The sound was subtle at first, a quiet hiss as the seal released, but it was enough to draw every eye toward the entrance. Leora looked up briefly, curious, but not expecting anything significant. That was when she saw him. The human walked in. He moved with ease, not as if he needed to prove anything, but with confidence that seemed natural. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his eyes scanned the classroom as if taking in every detail. He wore a simple uniform, a blend of practicality and style. There was no arrogance in his posture, just a calm presence that seemed to command attention without demanding it. The room fell into a brief silence. The next morning, the academy's corridors buzzed with energy. Alien students moved in clusters, their voices overlapping in strange melodies and chirps. Leora walked carefully, her sketchpad tucked under her arm. Every step felt heavier today, not from nerves, but from the anticipation that something important was about to happen. The previous day had changed the way the other students looked at her. They no longer whispered insults when she passed. Instead, there were curious glances, subtle nods, and cautious murmurs. And of course, there was Ethan, the human who had entered the classroom and changed everything. Leora found him near the practice labs, examining a piece of alien machinery with quiet interest. His brow furrowed slightly as he turned it over, noting its design and how it functioned. He moved with deliberate care, like someone who understood that rushing never solved anything. "Good morning," Leora said softly, approaching him. "Good morning," he replied, glancing up and smiling faintly. "Ready for today?" Leora nodded, though a part of her felt unsure. She didn't know what the day would hold. The Academy's reputation for rigorous tests and challenges had already spread, and she suspected that some students were still curious about how a human might measure up. The first lesson was in applied technology, a class meant to test creativity and problem-solving under time constraints. The aliens, with their multiple limbs and innate energy manipulation abilities, were confident. They whispered among themselves, smirking as they glanced at Ethan and Leora. "Watch this human," one of them said, a green-scaled alien with retractable wings. "He'll fail in a minute. He can't even lift the equipment without using alien powers." Ethan didn't reply. He simply adjusted the device in front of him, his eyes scanning the schematics on a holoscreen. Leora sat beside him, sketchpad open, not for drawing this time, but for taking notes and following his reasoning. The assignment began. Each team had to assemble a device that could stabilize energy flows in a complex alien reactor. Many of the aliens dove in with flashy displays of power, using energy bursts and multiple appendages to assemble the pieces quickly. Sparks flew, small alarms beeped, and some equipment overheated. Ethan remained calm. He examined each component carefully, noting how they interacted. When one part didn't fit perfectly, he paused, rotated it, and gently adjusted it. Leora watched, fascinated by the precision and patience in his movements. It was different from the aliens' methods. They relied on raw ability, but he relied on thought. "Here," Ethan said, pointing to a small connector that most had overlooked. "If we adjust the alignment slightly, it will balance the flow more efficiently." Leora followed his instruction, careful to move each piece exactly as he indicated. When the energy stabilized and the alarm stopped, a quiet ripple of surprise passed through the room. Several alien students stared at the human and the alien girl with disbelief. "Impossible," muttered the green-scaled alien. He fixed it without using powers?" Ethan didn't respond. He simply nodded to Leora and continued working. Together, they completed the device faster than anyone else in the room. Not with brute force, but with careful planning, observation, and teamwork. The instructor, a multi-eyed alien with crystalline hands, paused and studied their work. "Remarkable," the teacher said. "This is the most efficient assembly I have observed. Not only did you stabilize the energy flow, but you did so using minimal force. Excellent collaboration." Several students exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected a human to be weak, slow, and inferior. Instead, he had solved a problem that required intelligence, observation, and patience, traits they had not valued highly before. As the lesson continued, Ethan and Leora worked on the next challenge, programming a sequence for a simulated alien spacecraft. The aliens around them were confident, typing rapidly, their multiple limbs allowing them to input code faster than any human could. Yet their programs were chaotic. They relied on power and speed but neglected precision. Ethan, however, approached the problem differently. He broke it down into logical steps, debugging as he went. Leora observed and assisted when necessary, learning how humans approached problem-solving in ways that were completely new to her. "Humans think differently," she whispered to herself. She had known this in theory, but watching it in action was eye-opening. Ethan glanced at her. Exactly. Sometimes it's not about speed. It's about seeing what others miss. The aliens started noticing that while they had multiple abilities, their lack of patience and strategic thinking was costing them. Slowly, their confidence wavered. Whispers began. Maybe humans aren't so weak. Maybe we underestimated them. During a break, one of the bullies, the tall, blue-skinned alien who had mocked Leora the day before, approached. His usual smirk was gone, replaced with something closer to curiosity. You're human, he said slowly. How do you do it? You don't have powers like us. Ethan met his gaze calmly. Powers are useful, he said simply. But thinking, observing, and working with others, that's just as powerful. Sometimes more. The alien looked uncertain, and for a moment there was silence. Then he turned away, muttering something under his breath, clearly struggling to reconcile what he had believed with the reality in front of him. The second half of the lesson involved a team challenge, creating a small energy field that could protect a structure from simulated attacks. Many aliens tried to overpower the simulation with raw energy, but the field was unstable and collapsed. Ethan stepped forward. Let's think first, he suggested. We can use their energy, redirect it, and combine it with ours for balance. Leora followed his lead, helping to stabilize the sequence. Within minutes, the field held perfectly, deflecting every simulated attack. The classroom erupted in quiet murmurs of astonishment. The aliens who had doubted him were now staring, unsure how to respond. They had mocked humans for being weak and unremarkable, and now a human had not only solved problems they struggled with, but had done so with elegance and intelligence. After the lesson, the instructor addressed the class. Ethan has shown that ingenuity and observation are just as vital as raw strength. We must remember that intelligence takes many forms. Leora felt a surge of pride. She had admired humans quietly, secretly, and now she saw her belief reflected in reality. Ethan wasn't just clever. He was an example of humanity's adaptability, resilience, and calm confidence. Walking back to their dorms, Leora and Ethan were quiet, reflecting on the day. You've changed how they see us, Leora said softly. Even if they don't admit it. Ethan shrugged, a small smile on his face. I didn't come here to prove anything. I came here to learn and share what humans can do, but yes, it seems some lessons are being learned, whether they realize it or not. Leora laughed quietly. I never thought admiration could feel so satisfying. Ethan glanced at her, his eyes warm. Admiration isn't weakness. It's recognizing what's worthy. And humans have much that's worthy. As they approached the dormitory, Leora looked at the aliens passing by. Some still glanced at her with judgment, but others now regarded her with curiosity. The world was shifting around her, and she knew that today had been a turning point, not just for her, but for how humans would be seen in this academy. And for Leora, that made all the difference. The academy's central arena was alive with energy. It was not just a place for training. It was a stage where reputations were built and destroyed. Today, the air felt heavier, as if something important was about to happen. Students of many species filled the stands, their voices blending into a low hum. At the center of the arena stood Ethan, calm and collected, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. Beside him, Leora shifted nervously, her heart racing. Around them, the tall walls shimmered with protective fields. This was the place where students tested their strength, intelligence, and skill. The rumor had spread quickly. A human had outperformed many aliens in class. Some refused to believe it, others whispered about it endlessly, but one student refused to let the matter rest. The tall, blue-skinned alien who had mocked Leora from the beginning. His name was Varen. Varen stood across from Ethan now, his long limbs tensed like coiled ropes. His face carried the smirk of someone convinced of his own superiority. The audience leaned forward, eager to see the outcome. You think you're clever? Varen said, his voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. But in the arena, cleverness won't save you. Humans are fragile. You won't last 5 minutes. Ethan's expression did not change. He studied Varen with the same calm gaze he had shown in class. Strength comes in many forms, he replied evenly. The arena master, a tall alien with obsidian skin and glowing eyes, stepped forward. This will be a test of skill, not a fight to destroy. Each of you will attempt 3 tasks. The winner will be the one who shows the greatest balance of ability. The crowd erupted in cheers. A fair test, they thought. though many still believed the human would fail. The first task: agility trial. The walls of the arena shifted, rearranging themselves into a massive obstacle course. Platforms rose and fell, barriers slid into place, and beams of light cut across the field like lasers. The task was simple: reach the other side as quickly as possible. Varen moved first. His long limbs carried him swiftly across the platforms. He leapt easily over barriers, his alien muscles propelling him forward with power that no human could match. The arena challenge had ended, but its impact spread far beyond those walls. By the next day, whispers about Ethan's victory were everywhere in the academy. Corridors that once echoed with mocking laughter when Leora walked past now carried cautious greetings and curious questions. For the first time, she felt eyes on her that weren't full of scorn. Some students nodded politely, while others lingered nearby as if waiting for her to speak. It was strange. Just a few days ago, she had been invisible, or worse, the target of ridicule. Now, because of Ethan, everything was different. Ethan himself walked the halls as if nothing had changed. His steps were calm, his expression steady, his focus undisturbed. If he noticed the stares, he didn't show it. But Leora noticed everything. The way even the proudest students gave him space, the way the instructors seemed to watch him with new interest. One morning, in the main hall, a group of students approached. Among them was the golden-feathered alien who had once joined Varen in mocking her. His wings shimmered faintly as he shifted nervously. "You, human," the alien began, his voice quieter than before. "Yesterday, you showed skill. But was it luck? Or can you really teach us something?" The group leaned in, waiting. Ethan met their gazes one by one before answering. "It wasn't luck," he said simply. "It was preparation, observation, teamwork. If you want to learn, I'll share what I know." The students exchanged surprised glances. They had expected arrogance or dismissal. Instead, Ethan offered to teach. That afternoon, a small crowd gathered in one of the practice chambers. Ethan stood at the center, not as a boastful victor, but as a quiet guide. Leora stayed close, watching with pride as he explained simple human methods, breaking big problems into smaller parts, practicing patience, using creativity to see solutions others missed. The aliens listened. Some even tried his methods, surprised at how effective they were. A few stumbled, but Ethan encouraged them calmly, showing them how mistakes were part of learning. For the first time, Leora saw aliens treating a human not as a curiosity or weakness, but as someone worth listening to. A growing reputation. Over the next cycles, Ethan's reputation grew. In classes, he solved problems others struggled with. In training, he showed strategies that saved time and resources. In discussions, he spoke with respect even when correcting mistakes. The academy began to change, slowly but surely. Students who had once mocked humans now whispered about their adaptability. Instructors started designing lessons that tested not only power, but also creativity and logic. One evening, as the sunlight glow of the academy's artificial lights dimmed, Leora and Ethan walked through the gardens. Alien plants glowed faintly in the dark, their colors shimmering in patterns. "They look at you differently now," Leora said quietly. Ethan glanced at her. "And you too," she blinked. "Me," he nodded. "You stood by me when no one else did. They see that. You weren't wrong to admire humans. You just saw something they refused to see." Leora felt warmth rise in her chest. She had admired humans for so long in secret, and now her admiration was becoming something real, something others could no longer deny. Varen's shadow, but not everyone accepted the change. Varen, the blue-skinned alien who had lost to Ethan, grew more bitter with each passing day. His pride had been wounded deeply, and he could not bear the whispers that now questioned his strength. In the training halls, he watched Ethan carefully, his eyes narrowing whenever the human spoke. Among his own group, he whispered, "Poison. Humans don't belong here," he hissed. "They trick us with words and patience, but they're still weak. I'll prove it again. Next time, no puzzles, no strategy games. A real test. Then we'll see who survives." His followers nodded uneasily, unsure if they truly believed him anymore. Still, his determination was clear. The shadow of his resentment loomed over Ethan's growing respect. The instructor's test one day, the academy announced a special collaborative challenge. It was not a duel, but a group task designed to test cooperation among students of different species. Teams would be assigned randomly, forcing students to work together regardless of background. When the lists were posted, whispers filled the hall. Leora felt her stomach twist when she read their team. Ethan, Leora, and Varen. She glanced at Ethan nervously. This might not go well. Ethan's expression remained calm. Then we'll make it go well. The task was clear. Construct a functional energy dome capable of withstanding multiple simulated attacks. Success required not only skill but true teamwork. At first, Varen resisted. He crossed his arms, refusing to listen. I don't need instructions from a human, he snapped. Ethan didn't argue. He simply started working, examining the components and sketching a plan in the dust of the arena floor. Leora followed his lead, helping organize pieces. Slowly, Ethan explained each step, not commanding but inviting. When the first simulation began, their half-finished dome collapsed quickly under the pressure. Varen sneered. See, humans are useless, Ethan shook his head. No, we failed because we didn't work together. If you keep fighting me, we'll keep failing. For a moment, Varen glared, but the watching crowd and the instructor's sharp gaze pressed on him. Finally, with a grunt, he bent down and joined them. Something changed after that. With Varen's raw power, Leora's precision, and Ethan's strategy, the dome began to take shape. Each time it failed, Ethan calmly adjusted the plan, finding new ways to combine their strengths. By the final test, their dome held steady against the simulated barrage. The instructor nodded approvingly. Excellent. That is the power of cooperation. Remember this well. The crowd cheered not just for the result, but for the strange sight, a human, an alien admirer, and a bitter rival working side by side. A quiet moment later that evening, after the challenge ended, Leora and Ethan sat beneath the academy's glowing trees. The air was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of distant energy fields. You changed even Varen, Leora said softly. Ethan shook his head. He changed because he had to, but maybe one day he'll see why it matters. Leora looked at him with admiration. You don't just win challenges, you win people. That's harder. He smiled faintly. Humans aren't the strongest. We're not the fastest, but we've always survived by working together, by finding value in each other. Maybe that's what the universe needs too. Leora felt her heart swell. She realized then that what drew her to humans wasn't just their cleverness or adaptability. It was their ability to connect, to inspire, to bring out strength in others. A symbol of change in the days that followed, Ethan's name spread even further. Not as the human who won a duel, but as the student who turned rivals into teammates, who showed that strength wasn't just about power, it was about unity. Leora walked through the academy with her head higher now. She no longer hid her sketchpad, no longer feared the whispers. Students who once mocked her now asked questions about humans, curious and respectful, and as for Ethan, he remained the same, calm, steady, focused. He didn't seek fame or glory, but whether he wanted it or not, he had become a symbol, a reminder that humans, even among countless alien species, had something unique to offer. For Leora, it was more than a change in the academy. It was the proof she had always dreamed of, the proof that her admiration had meaning, that humans truly were special, and deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The academy was quieter than usual that morning. The usual hum of hollow screens and chatter had been replaced by a focused energy. A new project was underway, a collaborative venture that involved students from multiple species. The task was to design a sustainable energy system capable of powering a small colony ship. It was ambitious, complex, and required the combined skills of intellect, strategy, and creativity. Leora walked toward the project hall, sketchpad in hand, her heart racing with anticipation. Beside her, Ethan moved with the calm confidence that had become his signature. Other students filtered in, aliens with 4 arms, wings, scales, and crystalline eyes, each carrying their own expertise. Today was different. Today, humans were no longer outsiders. Today, they were contributors, innovators, and perhaps even leaders. The team assembles. The instructor assigned the teams randomly, but by chance, Leora and Ethan were placed together again, this time with a mix of alien students, including Varen. A murmur ran through the room. Some were curious, others skeptical. Varen stood stiffly, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Yet he did not speak. For the first time, he seemed uncertain about how to act. He had seen Ethan win, teach, and earn respect, but he had yet to experience true collaboration. Ethan glanced at Leora, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," she replied. The instructor laid out the challenge. "Your task is to design a portable energy core for the colony ship. It must be stable, efficient, and adaptable to unknown planetary conditions. You have 3 days. Teams will present their prototypes for evaluation." The students exchanged glances. 3 days were tight, even for seasoned engineers and scientists. But Ethan didn't flinch. "We start by understanding the components," he said calmly. "Then we figure out how to combine them effectively. Everyone has a role. Let's listen first, then act." The group nodded and the work began. Collaborative problem-solving. The first few hours were chaotic. Each alien had a different idea, different method, and different pace. Crystalline-eyed students preferred methodical,